Okay. Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody, anybody watching. Thank you, Andre. Thank you for being here. It's really good to see you, and I'm really grateful for your offer, your energy, your time, for being here with me, with us today. Um, for anybody listening, watching, I think Andre is really somebody who you should listen to, given his life story, his current work, his understanding of history of race in America, incarceration, policing, crime, etc. And I think your perspective is just really useful to help make sense of current events. And what I'm trying to do is to help use my outreach and networks and resources to amplify informed perspectives like your own. I also want to emphasize, I don't think that it's necessarily Black people's job to carry the additional burden of educating white people on racism and how to fix our systems. But, last week when we talked and I asked you what you thought would be helpful, you were excited for this, came up with the idea to record some conversations. So I'm game. I'm here to, support those efforts. And I also know that if I try to make this perfect and polished and edited and fully researched and fully in my comfort zone, it'll never happen. So I think it's better to, just do something, say something, and get going. I'm not the expert here, but I've been learning as much as I can recently. I am an expert in being a well-intentioned white person who's largely been on the bench and wants to do better for racial justice. So I think getting Andre's message out to more people like me seems like a good place to start. So I plan to share our conversation with my network, with my friends and family. So we can be thinking about that as we go forward. So Andre, I know about you, but I feel like I can't give you a proper introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm your friend for starters.
Yeah.
We're friends for starters. Andre Norman, born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. Went through a tough time as a young man, a lot of troubles with family, troubles with the neighborhood, poverty, educational system. Those things didn't work out for me for a variety of reasons. I become a young teenager. I'm not really engaged in school. I'm not really engaged with my parents. I'm not really engaged in much positive activity. And I'm in charge of feeding myself and taking care of myself, most of that through illegal means. And at some point, you come to an end, you engage with the police enough times, then you keep going to court a few times, and they send you to prison. So at 18 years old, I was sent to state prison. And I was given 7 to 10 years, 2 9 to 10 years, 2 10s, 2 15 and 20s, and a 5. And it was like, okay, see you later, bye. And I was supposed to do roughly 20 something years in prison. And then while I was in prison, when I first got there, I was scared to death, as anybody should be and would be. Then I found out prison was really a reunion of all my friends from the dummy class, all my friends from juvie probation, all my friends from the principal's office, all my friends from the county jail. Everybody was at the state prison system. They said, "Hey, Dre, what took you so long? We knew you were coming." It was like a meeting spot of all the guys that the system had turned his back on, or we didn't fit into the system, however you want to look at it. And it was like, even if you weren't from my neighborhood,
Hey, how to do that? Yeah, the
mm,
Facebook stopped. Hey, all right. Well, I'm gonna push it back out there. We're recording on Zoom, so I can at least
okay,
put the
yeah.
recording back out.
So um, then from there, it was just like guys from all over the state who had the same story: bad schools, bad families, poverty, not really engaged. Some of them on drugs, some of them had need to feed themselves. It just is all the same story. It was a whole system full of people who lost, and that's what that was. And for the first 6 years, I fed into the stereotypical: I'm going to be a gang leader. I'm going to be a bad guy. I'm in a place where bad guys live, so I have to be a bad guy. So I became one of the top gang leaders in my first 6 years in prison because I was really bought into that system. Then I had awakening. I finally woke up and I realized that I was the king of nowhere. And in being the king of nowhere, I was going nowhere and I was already there. Forget going nowhere fast, I was already there.
Hmm.
I came up with a strategy to go home, change my life. I wanted to be successful. And so I said, I'm going to go to home, go to university. I'm sorry I didn't pick Stanford. I didn't know about it. I picked Harvard. And that was my goal. I wrote my plan down and I stuck to my plan and I kept going. And I eventually got out of prison. I eventually started working with inner city kids all over the city, Black, white, and Spanish. Then I started working with white kids at public schools and private schools. I started working with teachers, and eventually I got my fellowship at Harvard Law School. but I've been doing for the last 20 years of my life some kind of social justice. And social justice isn't just helping Black people. It was helping white kids in Scottsdale who were on drugs. It was helping kids in Guatemala who didn't have homes. It was helping kids in West Africa who were child soldiers and their whole families were killed, as well working with Black people who were dealing with bad situations here back at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just a guy somebody described it earlier. I just help people.
Yeah, you show up when people give the call, you find a way to be there.
Yeah, you call me, I show up.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah. And what's your current work mostly? What are you working on these days?
My current work is 2 years ago, there was a riot in a prison here in South Carolina. I'm not from South Carolina, but it was a riot in a prison in South Carolina. 7 men were murdered, 30 more were wounded, and they didn't have an answer. They needed a solution. I'm the solution guy for violent scenarios. So they called me, I came in. I've been here for almost 18 months running a prison unit. And what they did is they went around the state and got like the worst prisoners, the top gang leaders, the top influencers. We put them all in one unit. And then I managed that unit. So it was me and my guys managed that particular unit. And we went from 7 dead people on the floor to no weapons, no assaults, no fights for a calendar year. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been excited to learn more about that program. And we've talked about coming out and doing some evaluation programs and all that. But you know.
The key thing was talking to them like humans. They're criminals. They've committed crimes. They're the worst of the worst, but they respond to the English language. That's the funny thing. It's not always like tear gas and clubs. When you speak to people, they speak back. When you show up with a club, they fight back. So I just speak to them and give them the opportunity to be right or wrong. When they're right, I tell them they're right. When they're wrong, I tell them they're wrong. And we map out our plan and we stay the course.
Yeah, it's fantastic work. So let's get to our topics. What's been going around in your head these last couple of weeks, and what do you think the world needs to hear more of?
What's been going around in my head is I hear a lot of discussion, and I've chaired and led a lot of discussions around white-Black conversations. What should white people be thinking? What should Black people be thinking? What should white people be saying or not saying? What should Black people be saying or not saying? And in that, the first thing I want to say is we have Asians in this country. We have Latinos in this country. We have Arabs in this country. We have a lot of other people in this country. So we don't want to make it just white-Black, even though a lot of the contention starts there. But everybody should be included in this conversation. It shouldn't just be two sets of people. And a lot of folks watched the video of George dying. They watched it. COVID put everybody in the house. The whole country was in the house, the whole world. And that man died on national TV or streaming live on a site near you. And there was no ambiguity. There was no foot chase. There was no, I think he was reaching for a weapon. It was just clear. There was no police tactics used a little bit wrong. It was just clear, from what I saw, my opinion, just a clear, outright injustice. And whoever that man was, and whatever he did the day before or the day of, shouldn't have ended like that. And once that happened, the world took a lot of different views. White people were like, oh my God, is that what they've been talking about? Black people have been like, oh my God, here we go again. The social justice said, or the criminal justice said, how do we cover this up? The media decides what's going to be the angle. Is it going to be the bad cop? Is it going to be, so everybody had their little narrative that they were trying to spin, and it's divisive at one level. And then you have the people who say, okay, we're going to go protest. That's fine. And then people say, we're going to go riot. That's not so fine. Then people say, we're going to go loot. 3 different sets of people.
Yeah. And yeah, let's talk a little bit about that.
People who go to sporting events just to get drunk. They don't go to watch the game. That's a place to get drunk. You know why? Because they're drinkers. So if they go to a sporting event, if they go to a movie, wherever they go, they're going to get drunk. And that's just what they do. And some people go because they love being out at movies. They go for the joint. There's 3 types of people that are in the street. The people who want to protest because they're angry. The people who want to riot because they're angry and don't know how to control it. And the people who want to loot because that's just what they want to do.
Yeah, and let's talk about that and how people react to that. Because a lot of what I see is, you know, if especially people who are not particularly sympathetic towards Black Lives Matter movement or racial justice issues. They want to lump all of three of those groups together in one.
Right.
And they want to sort of paint them all with the same brush. But yeah, how do you just sort of pull them apart?
The people who are saying, well, they're all one person, evidently don't know Black people, because you're making three sets of Black people one person.
Hmm.
And the other thing is, they're not all Black people out there protesting, rioting, and looting. But the baseline is, you can't make three people one. That's where we start the problem. We just said one size fits all. It's not one size fits all. I'm Black, I'm angry, I want to protest, but I don't want to loot.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying you're white, you're angry or upset or disgruntled. You want to protest, whatever that means to you, but you want to go riot and you don't want to go loot.
Mm-hmm.
So to say, well, everybody in the street's a looter. No, it's not the case. Everybody in the street's not a looter. And everybody doesn't support looting. I'm an entrepreneur. I support entrepreneurs. So anytime I see anybody's business damaged, it doesn't sit well with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the all or nothing is just a way of not having the conversation. So if you're one of I don't need you to agree with the protesters. I don't need you to agree with the looters. I don't need you to agree with the rioters, but don't make them all one person. And when you do, it's a way of dismissing the conversation and getting away with it. Let's forget about those three sets of people. Let's talk about what started this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Man on the sidewalk, handcuffed, held down by 2 or 3 officers, and he died. So let's not talk about your agreement with the looters, your agreement with protests, your agreement with how they should protest. That's an entirely different discussion. We can have that later. Mm-hmm. This discussion initially should simply, did you see the video? And what did you think of the video?
Yeah.
That's it. But people not wanting to discuss the facts of the video that they saw because it's a hard video to watch. They want to talk about the things that are abstract or secondary. Let's talk about that. They're throwing bricks in windows. Another discussion.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, separate and secondary to sort of the primary precipitating event. And do you want to talk more about what goes beyond just that singular event that everybody's watched, but what is the context in which, that came to be, and why is that such a pivotal moment for Black Lives Matter movement right now? What's brought us to this current situation?
Well, I'll first say this. My son comes home on report card day, and he wants to clean his room. He wants to take out the trash. He wants to tell me how much he loves Dad. And I'm not hearing any of that. I'm not entertaining any of that person. That's not the person I want to talk to right now. I want to talk to the student, the guy who said he was doing homework when he was really on Xbox. I want to talk to the guy who said he had homework done when we took off on a weekend skateboarding with his friends. I'm not trying to see the nice son that he's projecting right now. I understand this, and he is the same person. So what it has done is created a conversation that didn't happen before. With COVID-19 shutting the world down, because we would have all been busy, myself included, on the plane going someplace, and we might have saw this on the 6 o'clock news or feed 2 weeks from now. The difference is we all saw it at once in real time. And everybody saw it across the world because the whole world is sitting at home. And the whole world saw it, and it's like, wow, that's bad. Mm-hmm. Then the discussion comes, well, has it been like this? Now, George Floyd's death is not the same as all the others. There's been a lot of people who've died, and I believe a lot of them unjustly. You can argue some of them. You cannot argue some of them. But we don't want to cloud the issue with, for me, there's a pattern. And because I've been watching the pattern all my life. Mm-hmm. For you, this might be the first time you've encountered this. So I don't need you to say, what about the other ones? We wanted to say, if this happened, how do we get this not to happen again? Mm-hmm. I don't need you to be concerned with the 20 other, 30 other, 50 other people who might have died unjustly. Let's talk about the one you saw, the one that's clear and cut, and say, how do we get that not to happen again? As Black people, I don't need you to know my 50-year, 400-year struggle. Mm-hmm. Let's agree on this, that this shouldn't happen again. And we'll take that. I don't need you to acknowledge, something, 50 people have died unjustly. One is enough, and one is too many. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to cloud it with 400 years of oppression, 400 years of slavery, 400. those are all contributing factors how we got here, but it's not contributing factors how you got here. You got here because of what you saw 2 weeks ago. I'm cool with that. I don't want to bash you in the head for not knowing sooner, or you should have known this sooner, you should have known that sooner. No, that's again a distractionary tactic. If anybody's yelling at you for not knowing sooner, they're not trying to get to a solution.
Yeah, it might not bring. I mean, obviously, we want everybody to be as informed and, you know, as awoke to this moment in history and everything that's led up to it as possible. But if we're just coming into the conversation now, or just coming into action now, might as well start where we can have, you know, productive movement forward. Because that was one of our topics, was this sense of sort of, you know, white guilt, people who are, you know, becoming aware of what's been going on. And maybe they knew in the back of their mind, like, yeah, seems like an issue, but I don't, you know, it's too much for me.
It doesn't affect me.
Yeah, it doesn't affect me. I don't know what to do. It seems too vague, ambiguous, whatever, you know, all the sort of excuses and reasons people might make for not having engaged in the past. And now they feel like they feel like they need to be engaged. So I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
I want to share this.
Yeah.
People say it's one person. I'm one person. He's one person. What's the difference? What can I do as one person? My grandfather on my mother's side and my grandfather on my father's side. My grandfather on my father's side was born in 1905 in Richmond, Virginia. I don't know when my mother's father was born, but he was born at roughly the same time, probably 1905 in Boston. And the two of them, my father's father had 5 kids. My mother's father had 4 kids. Then my mother had 6. And then that's on us. Then my brother, my aunts and uncles all had kids. There's 6 of us in my mother's line. There's 6 of us. So we probably have like 12 kids between us. But if you add up for not counting my grandfather, all of his kids, all of his grandkids, which I'll be one of, all of his great grandkids, which would be my son and his generation, then my nephew's kids, which would be his great grandkids, on both sides from both grandfathers. That would equal almost 1,000 life years produced. So imagine if 1905, my father's father and my mother's fathers would have been murdered. That's 1,000 life years that wouldn't be on the planet. All my aunts and uncles, my mom wouldn't be here. My dad and all his aunts and uncles wouldn't be here. Me and all my siblings and cousins wouldn't be here. My whole nephew, nieces, and my son wouldn't be here. My great nephews wouldn't be here. 2 men could have died in 1905, which would have eliminated 1,000 years of life on this planet in contribution. So 2 lives matter that much. So when you start talking about George Floyd, he could have generated 500 years of life. If he'd have just had kids and they had kids and you're talking about, right now today, my grandfathers have generated 1,000 years of life. They could have easily been snuffed out in 1905 being Black. And nobody would have understand the repercussions. So when I look at George Floyd dying, I'm saying you just killed off a whole lineage of people that he was going to produce into this world, that his grandkids would have produced. And who knows who were they going to be? So you look at my great-great-grandfather, he might have been a slave in Virginia. And they'd be like, oh, he doesn't matter. He dies, I don't become born. So he mattered because we needed him to get to me. We needed your great-grandfather to get to you. So if your great-grandfather died 100 years ago, you're not here. Your brothers and sisters aren't here. Your mother and father, your mother's not here. So it matters. Every life matters in that instance. And I don't want people to underscore, well, I'm only one person. Well, you have the ability to generate multiple years of life. And if you have the ability to generate them, you have the responsibility to help keep them and maintain them. If the math makes sense.
Definitely. And how we talked a while back a little bit about effective actions, solutions, contributions. You know, there seems like an almost overwhelming amount of information and opportunities to come into in this moment. And I've looked into a few organizations, nonprofits, things that work on these issues directly. But what have you been thinking about this past week, and what are you trying to direct people to do these days?
Last week when we had that conversation about where can we give money, where can we give time, I said, let's us do it. This isn't costing us money. This isn't a money issue. This is people being committed issue. It'd have been a lot easier for you to write a check and put it in the mailbox. I could have said, hey, send the money here. And you would have wrote a check, put it in the mailbox, and you're like, okay, I'm good, and walk away. Versus us taking the time to put in focused effort. Now, if all the people did this opposed to just writing a check, then we'd be a lot better off.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, I just watched the movie Harriet Tubman again, and I cried again because it's my history, part of it. If you went back to slavery and you took a vote of all the slaves, they'd have voted to end slavery day 2. 50 years in, 100 years in, 150 years in, they would have all voted to end slavery. Never was their vote asked for, never did their vote matter. It wasn't until Northern white abolitionists said no more to slavery did we start and get to an end of slavery in its current, in that format. Right now, Black Lives Matter, people dying in the street at the hands, justly or unjustly, whether they're going to prison, they're left on drugs, or they're dying in the street, or they're being undereducated. Until the white abolitionists, being in this case, the people who care, white folks say, we're not tolerating this. We need the soccer moms, we need the lawyers, we need the professors, we need the doctors, we need the janitor guys, we need cops, we need judges, liberal white folks to say, you know something? We want these folks educated. We want these folks free from oppression. We want them to have the same equal rights as the rest of the country. And it's been like, well, why can't you make it? Oh, if we've had this discussion, if I take you and me and we start the same line, and for 400 years you can't read, write, or work, and any work that you do, all money goes to me. Then at the end of that time, I finally tell you you can work. Then if you get too successful, I just come take it from you and kick you down. And if you complain, I kill you. So now we're 350 years, we're 400 years in. Now, okay, we're going to let you work and keep your money, but we're not going to let you vote. We're going to put you in bad schools. And we can go through the scenarios. Then finally we say, okay, let's just call, we're going to forget all the drama. Let's just go. It doesn't, there's no way humanly possible I'm going to catch up collectively. There's no way humanly possible I'm going to get ahead. So that's why you have neighborhood upon neighborhood upon neighborhood, thrust of people stuck in it. It is the goal of everybody in an urban setting / the ghetto to get out. I have friends who live in the suburbs. None of them are saying, I need to get out of here. I got to make some money to get out of here. They're happy where they are. Nobody in the inner city is happy being in the inner city because it's so horrible. And we just say, okay, I don't know why they're horrible. And you have to say living conditions will dictate personality and choices. So how are people living? And that's not to say that aren't poor white people. But we're looking at the poor Black folks. If we leave them with horrible schools, horrible conditions, and I don't want to make it into a political thing. We just want to make it better. And this is a time that we have a conversation and say, know something? Let's not forget the last 400 years, but let's talk about the next 400 years. I can spend the rest of the week talking about injustice, bad treatment, lynching, slavery, inappropriate schools, over sentencing, crack versus powder cocaine. I can do that for the next 5 weeks and not blink, but it's not going to get us moving forward. You're here, I'm here, let's make it better. I'm not trying to say forgive and forget, but let's build something before we start talking about what we didn't do and what hasn't been done.
Yeah, and in the spirit of trying to make things better. So we've talked about showing up, having conversations, putting yourself into situations that might be uncomfortable. You might have to look at things and see things that you'd rather pretend didn't exist, as white people, as people with different types of privilege. And I think, I can include with this video some of those organizations and links that we've talked about as far as people trying to make a difference. But it seems like you're saying it's also, just as important, or if not more so, to be willing to show up and to say something out against what we've all seen and what's brought us to this current moment.
This is not something you can subcontract. This is not something you can delegate. If you want to be changed, they said it. If be the change that you want to see in the world. I can't pay you to do my push-ups. I hate doing push-ups. I hate eating right. I hate going for walks. And I can pay you to do it, but won't do me any good.
Mm-hmm.
I can hire somebody to do push-ups. He'll get stronger. I can hire somebody to eat well. They'll get healthier. I can hire somebody to do a lot of stuff, but it's not if you want this subject to get better, and you want this situation to grow, you have to physically, personally do the work. Mm. The delegation and the subcontracting will not work in this instance. Mm. And I've said before, education is a true equalizer. So Andre, where do I start? I'm a middle-class white person, man, woman, child. Where do I start? If we can just say, okay, let's fix the educational system. Educated people tend not to rob banks. Educated people tend not to sell drugs. Educated people tend not to become prostitutes and gang members. Uneducated people tend to take those roles. So if we go back and start educating people, there's an entire race of people in elementary school right now. And if you give them the next 8 or 9 years, if you don't treat them, they'll be your next set of criminals. What if we went in to elementary school to the 6 and 7-year-olds, they're about this tall, and started being nice and training and treating them and showing them a way? That would be tremendous going forward. 100, what about today? If I got a choice between a grown man and a baby, give me the baby every time. Grown man got to find his way. And that's what you can have your kids, soccer moms, of which my wife is one. They go to those schools and they make sure they run right. I would love to have 50 soccer moms pull up on an urban school and say, we're going to fix this thing. It's not about money because it's state money allocated to the school. It's not about books. There's books there. It's not about teachers. There's teachers there. It's about the know-how and the spirit to make that thing go. Accountability. There's no accountability for doing Black people wrong. Not just in the streets at the hands of police, but in the school department. 60% or 70% of kids are flunking out of public schools. And it's been like that for decades. There's no way you would allow your kids to go to a school that had a 70% dropout rate. Unheard of, but it's okay in the poor communities. It's okay for all these things that happen in the poor communities. It's not my problem. But now it is everybody's problem. If we fix that, we all get better. So if I had to pick one thing, education overrides everything. I mean, we've had the discussion. Don't worry about racism. Don't focus on, we got to get rid of racism. That's a waste of time and nothing conversation. There will always be some people who didn't like some people and won't like some people. If you're a racist, I'm not mad at you. You're entitled. Just don't become a cop and come work in the inner city. Be a racist and work in the suburbs with people you like. I'm a Red Sox fan. You don't see me hanging out at Yankee Stadium. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you're talking about sort of individual racism, people who, just like really have, animus towards people of other races for whatever reason. I don't want people to hear that and think, sort of racist institutions and things that produce these large unequal outcomes, in these neighborhoods and these schools. People talk about that as a form of racism too, when, schools with Black kids get, a pittance of the funding that schools with white kids have in wealthier neighborhoods.
I mean, that goes to tax bases and all the rest of that. We don't need, this is the thing about Black folks. We don't need a Bentley. We just need you not to be out in the street with armed guards. We'll get there. Right now, we'll get there. We don't need the best of the best. We went from the bottom of a slave ship to the White House. So we don't need a perfect road. It'd be nice. We're not asking for a gold paid road. We're asking for is the way your school works for your kids, make it work like that for our kids. Now, will we have the same textbooks? No. Will we have the exact same things? No. Do we need all that? No, it'd be nice, but it's not what I'm asking for. We don't need like gold chandeliers and platinum toilets. You know how to make schools work, because every suburb I've ever been in, those schools work. So there's enough regular people like yourself whose kids go to school and you have a certain level of expectation and standards that you demand. If you and your cohort said, we're going to bring those standards to an inner city school and hold the people running them accountable, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy. That's something that you can do. You might not be able to march down Main Street or take on police brutality, but you can definitely bring your understanding and insight of how educational systems work to our public school system. And your taxpayers' dollars are running the school, so you have a voice in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to wrap up. I don't want to take too much of our time, and I want to be able to do this again, again next week. And I know we've barely scratched the surface of so many of these issues, but is there anything you want to close with? You're known sometimes as the ambassador of hope, as it says in the background there. Is there anything about this current moment that's making you more hopeful than you were before?
These conversations are happening. And as long as the conversations are happening, they're all not going to be easy. You don't have to be, nobody should be putting you on Front Street or making you feel bad. This isn't a shame thing. There's a lot of things I didn't know in my life, about my life, and people taught me. It was hard and it was embarrassing, but nobody put me on a 6 o'clock news with it. Mm-hmm. So there's some things you're going to learn, like, wow, I've been missing this, and this is how they, I'm just, know something? I'm just happy you're here. It's like if your son goes out and he stays out too late and stuff happens and he went to the hospital, he's going to be in trouble tomorrow, but you're just happy he's okay. Mm-hmm. I'm just happy you're here. We're going to heal. We're going to heal because we've been healing. But I'm just happy you're in the waiting room and you're officially here and you're talking to the doctors and you're talking to the nurses and you're there. I can see you. Your presence matters. Mm. Your presence is huge. And one of my main questions I'm going to end on is, as a white person, what do I say to my kids, Andre? Mm. Because you live in a neighborhood where it might not be a lot of minorities or blacks. It might not be a school that has that. So what do? I say with the young ones, you control their environment. Now, I'm not saying drop your kid off in the middle of South Central, waste of time. They have cartoons with black people in them. They have toys that are now, have black people. They have black dolls. They have black toys. They have black little black kids on bed sheets. So you can introduce your child to culture through cartoons, through the movies that you watch. You don't have to take him and go find him a best friend, but you can just say, know something? Let me put this cartoon on, and they'll watch it. You take your kid to the zoo. Maybe there's a black kid in the neighborhood that can't afford to go, or maybe he can. You grab him up and you take him, bring him along. Then kids will just play. They don't know black, white. They just play. Mm. They won't know black, white until we teach them. Mm-hmm. So somebody says, what you doing with that black kid? Your son will never know. Your daughter will never know until somebody points out that there's a difference. Mm-hmm. This is historic and it's dated, it's documented. So if you can pick kids up and include them in some of the stuff you do, there are some camps. There are thousands of TED Talks. Black people, white people, Spanish people giving them. Have your kid watch some of the TED Talks. Don't say, watch this black man. Hey, watch this talk. Watch this movie. You don't need to watch Harriet Tubman or Martin Luther King's story. Therethere's enough black cinema and the black movies that's PG-13 or not over the top crazy that your kids can watch and learn something from. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It doesn't always have to be this historical event. Like, we're going to watch Roots. No. Mm-hmm. We're just going to watch this Denzel Washington movie. And we're going to watch this Nick Cannon TV show. We're going to, you can just introduce culture without having to drag them down in the middle of some neighborhood and say, you're going to meet these people because it's for your benefit. Then they'll reject it just because. Yeah, yeah. Introduce culture the way, everybody has social media. Help them follow this. As much as they can follow the white skateboarders, there's a couple black skateboarders. There's a couple black swimmers. I was actually a swimmer as a kid. There's a lot of black folks doing a lot of great things in business and not. And the younger they are, you introduce them, the more readily they'll receive it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, make sure that. Because if you walk into college at 19 and you've never encountered black people or black culture in any regard, you're going to avoid them because you're going to feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So we do our kids a disservice by not introducing the culture sooner. Now, I'm not talking about, hey, they got to listen to rap music or they got to listen to R&B, they got to go to a black gospel church. No. Cartoons are fan-friendly. Games are fan-friendly. Toys are fan-friendly. So there's ways that you can just start. It's not just, oh my God, we got to march down the street arm in arm to make this better. No. Put on Dora the Explorer for your kid. Dora is Spanish for the record. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of cartoons and things that are engaging and educational, but not over the top and heavy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, that note to parents and to children in the next generation. I like your focus on, what we can do from a prevention side of things, because that's my area too in public health. We're always looking at what's the root cause and what can we do to stop this problem from happening, at its source. And so I appreciate all that.
I don't,
Any,
need, I don't need you to go out and find a great black doctor and make them the spokesperson.
mhm,
We don't need a great black spokesperson. We just need great people speaking out.
mhm.
That's all.
Yeah. All right, Andre. Well, I really appreciate you. I've got a lot of respect for you, and thank you for taking the time. And I aim to be back here with you next week if you still
We're
want
back.
more of these.
No, stop it. No, we're back, man. Be confident, man.
All right.
Don't
Well,
be
with
back
that,
up on me.
I'm gonna, if there's anything you want to send out along with this, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'll sprinkle in things that I've been finding that I think are helpful,
Definitely.
opportunities, actions, behaviors. So that'll come out along with this too.
And we gotta let people send questions in. We can keep coming up with questions. Let the people watching Facebook please send your questions to Stephen, and then we'll get them on and we'll answer them next week.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Andre.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.